Hello, peeps and creeps, and welcome to Fright Club. I'm Gav, he's Danny.
Hello.
We are the Fright Club NI, and this is a brand new episode of Monday Night Frights. On tonight's show, we're heading back to Elm Street! We're here tonight to talk about the final nightmare. Freddy's dead!
Freddy's dead. He's dead. He's gonna dead.
He's dead, pal!
He's gonna dead.
Danny,
Oh.
tonight's episode is a little bit different.
It's a little different.
We're experimenting with the format, we're changing it slightly. You will still hear our dulcet tones. However, you will not see our ugly faces. That's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know.
Speak for yourself, man.
I like seeing your wee face, Danny, on the screen.
Thanks. I love seeing your face too.
Good,
but
good.
yes, we're gonna try an audio format with clips from the
be
film,
audio,
so
yeah.
you get to enjoy it with your ear holes. And if you wish to engage with your eye holes, you'll see clips from the film we're talking about, which is Freddy's Dead.
Now, we can't guarantee that the
bad
clips will
thing.
match up with what we're talking about at the time. We'll try our best,
We'll do our best.
but there'll be some sort of visual thing there for you. But yeah, it'll be mostly an audio thing. Normal service may resume next week. It may not. We'll see how this goes.
Let us know in the comments below. What do you think of the format? Do you like it, or do you want to see this back, this, and that, or
Both.
that, whatever way it's?
No, that way. I think.
That.
No, other way. Is it that way? I don't know.
Anyway,
You're
this way for me.
Freddy's dead.
Freddy is dead.
And we're back with episode 6.6 of Monday Night Frights. Tonight we're talking about the final nightmare in the Elm Street saga. Or is it?
Ooh.
Daniel, it's Freddy's dead.
Freddy is dead.
Freddy is dead. He's fucking dead.
He's dead. He's absolutely dead. But he's no dead. But he is dead. But he's no dead. He's no dead. He's no dead at all.
They never fucking die.
He makes a real point of being like talking through how they've tried to kill him already and how he's not dead. But yet Freddy is dead because that's the title of the movie.
It's a big massive spoiler for people. Freddy dies at the end of this.
Freddy gets done to kill.
So yes, the final nightmare supposedly was supposed to be the final nightmare. It was released in 1991 and was the end of the Elm Street franchise for a couple of years, 3 years in fact, and then Wes Craven released New Nightmare, which of course was completely different beast in itself, which we will get there next season, because if anyone who's been watching our channel, you will realize that we always talk about a Freddy Krueger film each season. We do. You've come out, get it out. I haven't. I've got my blades there somewhere.
Got your blades. I'm pretty sure little Freddy's under your thinking cap as well.
Got my Freddy's up there.
Little Freddy's up there too. So we love. I think it's fair to say we're massive Elm Street fans.
Yes, we are indeed.
Elm Street fans. Maybe not so much the remake. Again, if you would like to see us talk about the remake, you got to let us know in the comments below. We're not keen to do it, but if you would like to see us do it, if you would like to see us pretty much like.
I think you want to talk about it because you fucking
There's a part of me
that's
just
time.
like, could we really get into it? Like, I feel we could get into it, and something also tells me, you know, the way, especially me, we start talking about what we don't like about a thing, but the more we try to get into that, we end up discussing things we do like. Not that I'm saying we will end up like loving it, but there probably will be something that we take from it that we're like, you know what, it wasn't that bad. And that's exactly what we're going to do with this movie. Freddy's Dead, for the most part, is shite.
It is. It is not the greatest film in the franchise. In fact, it's widely touted as being the worst of the franchise, and I would agree with that. However, I do hold quite a bit of nostalgia for this film because it was released in 1991, so it was the first one that was released that I can remember
in your youth,
like kind of being like, oh, this is coming out and I want to see it, whereas the previous ones I feel like I watched them whenever they had already been released, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I remember when this was coming out. I don't remember it being in the cinemas, but I definitely remember the VHS and the whole 3D element, which we'll get into. But I remember I can close my eyes now and I can picture watching it on video at my friend's house in his living room, his second living room type thing, and it was quite secretive. We weren't allowed to watch it, obviously. but we were just like,
Sneaky
"What's this
boys.
3D stuff? What does this mean? When do we put the glasses on? What do we do here?" And it was just a case of like being completely blown away by this whole 3D gimmick, which, was very much a gimmick of its
Mm,
time. And although it's still about, it still seems to be a gimmick. It's not something that I particularly like in
yeah.
films or look forward to, and it doesn't make me really want to see things, although it made me want to see this. So,
Mhm.
but when did you first see Freddy's Dead?
When did I first? I'm trying to remember when exactly I first seen it. I remember my mate in secondary school lended me the box set with them all in, and I
Mm,
basically just like powered through them then. So I must have been about 14 or 15, I think, whenever I ripped through the entire Elm Street franchise. And this one doesn't there's elements of this one that I think stick with me, but overall, like this is one this for me is probably the worst one. This is the one that
mm.
rewatching it for this, I was like, this is a straight to DVD. Well, had there been DVDs at the time, this is a straight to DVD movie. Like it just doesn't have the same. It doesn't. It feels cheaper than the
It doesn't have
rest.
the cinematic quality.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have that cinematic quality. Even Freddy's look in this one
Mm,
is cheaper. It
mm,
looks like a rubber mask he has on.
mm.
And again, that works for certain elements of it, like the video game part and stuff. But overall, there's a lot of this. It feels like it's trying to. It feels Burton-esque almost in its like use of color and exaggerated setting. There's quite dark and dank industrial, but then that's juxtaposed against like the like nice, when we have the flashbacks of like Freddy's
Mm.
house and it's all
It's like
quite Edward Scissorhandsy.
neighborhoody sort of white picket
Yeah, but we
fence
we
stuff.
get the we get the kind of contrast then of the rundown Elm Street as well against
Hmm.
that. And there's even that fantastic moment whenever they first enter the house and
Yeah, yeah.
it all changes. But yeah, there was something about it that I was like, there's stuff, there's elements I really like here. They're just executed way below budget.
Mm. Well, that's a nice segue into the budget. The budget was about 10 million, just under 10 million, I think it was, which is a lot of money um, back in the early 90s. It did make a pretty good profit. It made about three times its budget at the box office and was, up until that point, was the highest opening weekend.
Mhm.
And it beat the previous one, Dream Master and stuff. Freddy versus Jason did beat it though, and I think it still holds the record for the highest grossing opening weekend. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong there. Feel free to.
Mhm.
So just to go back on what you said there, it's definitely the least memorable
Mhm.
Elm Street film.
It's got bits and pieces that kind of come to mind, but
Uh,
they're not elements that you remember being from this movie. You're like, that's a good bit in the franchise, but you're like, but what one is it? Like,
yeah,
what one did that happen in again? Yeah.
it doesn't make you think of this movie necessarily. There are some really bad things that make you think about this movie, certain scenes
Well,
and
yeah.
sequences that we'll talk about in a bit. But I think in general, what this film lacks is it lacks I think it lacks a look. I think it lacks atmosphere, aesthetics, and you know what I mean by that is if you look at all the previous Elm Street films, the first couple all kind of have that same kind of look, grungy. Well, I suppose even right up until part five, they all have that kind of grungy look. Now, the last couple really went for the kind of MTV style look and colors, and it has a really nice aesthetic. We talked about the
Mhm.
neon
Blue
greens
hues
and the
and the neon.
blues and the pinks and all that sort of stuff. I think this film has some nice lighting, but in general,
Mhm.
it's just very bland. There's nothing memorable. The shots are quite boring. There's a few nice shots in there, but in general, it's kind of just boring. It's just very bland.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and and
No,
that's not even
it's
taking into consideration what the story is and where they went with the plot, which is
mhm.
very, very messy.
It's very
Uh,
messy. It could have been so interesting, but it's just
uh,
so poorly executed. Like yeah, I love a lot of what they put on the plate, but the way it's cooked is
mm,
with leaves a lot to be
sham.
desired.
So it
Yeah.
was directed by Rachel
Yeah.
Talalay, who worked for many years as a producer for New Line and produced some of the previous films. And by the time they got to this one, and they were like, right, this is going to be the last in the franchise. I think Bob Shea, who was the head of New Line, said like, we've got other things that we're doing now. We've got other franchises that we might be able to build here. I think it's time that we put Freddy to rest. And to be honest, I think they just hired her because she just said, "Look, can I direct the film?" And she had been working with the franchise for so long, so I'm guessing she was probably a bit cheaper than having to go out and seek a director. And I don't mean that in any negative way or anything. I just think that it was probably it was just an easier way to go than trying
Mhm.
to seek a director to work on this one. Um, she's also she's directed loads of things, loads of TV work over the years, and she's still directing. I think she's done like The Adventures of Sabrina and Riverdale, and she's worked on loads of American television shows over the years, and she directed Tank Girl as well, which is
Ooh.
probably one of her most famous works.
Mhm.
It stars Lisa Zane
Mhm.
as the main girl, and then it's got Sean Greenblatt. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Sean Greenblatt is John Greenblatt.
Leslie Dean, famously, and
Mhm.
Breckin Meyer as well. So Breckin Meyer, you probably recognize his face. He went on to star in like Clueless and
Mhm.
loads of kind of like
The live action Garfields.
teen comedy. Oh, really? Is he in that as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's John in the live action Garfields, and then he's also like one of the main dudes of Robot Chicken.
Oh, yeah. Is he Breckin
Yeah, yeah,
Meyer?
it's him and Seth Green. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Of
Mhm.
course he is. Yeah. I just obviously he was big in the 90s. In the early 2000s, he did a lot of sort of like teen comedies and
Yeah.
those kind of comedy
It's one
movies.
of those things whenever I was watching it, I was like, I know his
I know
face, but you
you. I
know who I
do.
thought it was? You know who I thought it
Who?
was? Fucking X-Files. Uh but again, he would have been
David
too
Duchovny?
old. Yeah, for some reason in my brain, I was like, is that fucking David Duchovny? And then I was like, of course not. No, he'd be too old. Like he would be that young at that point,
No, yeah, he would have
you
been.
know, in
Yeah.
91. So I was just kind of like, why do I know your face? And then realized I was like, oh fuck.
Sure,
Yeah, of
X-Files
course.
debuted in like 95 or something, but it not, or was it 96? Or was it 94? I don't know. X-Files was about the
Uh
90s there. Um,
93. So it was only
93.
2
It was
years
September 93 it
after
was, yeah.
this. So but yes, it was one of those things where I was watching, I was like, eh? And then I was
Is
like, no,
that
no, no,
him?
no. No, definitely
Yeah.
not.
But
But yes.
so yeah, that was the cast. Obviously, a few other cast members, but stars Yaphet
Mhm.
Kotto as well, who's famously from Alien. He plays
Mhm.
the Doc in this, so he was, I
He plays
suppose,
Doc.
yeah, he was supposed like a big name at the time. A big actor.
Mhm.
Um,
I
it
mean,
was
there
written.
is another very big actor in this who is reprising a role
Oh
as
yeah, yeah,
well,
of course. Cut well
which
cameos.
yeah,
His is very much a cameo,
is a cameo.
Mr.
It's a great moment. It's
Jonathan
actually
Depp.
probably Mr. John Word Depward. Yeah, his moment actually when that happened, I was like, hey, again, that whole bit with Breckenmeyer and his whole kind of like tripping out, that is a good sequence. I really enjoyed that sequence, but again, it's just really funny because of how fucking goofy it is.
Mm.
But yeah, when Johnny Depp made another reappearance as Glenn, I was like, hey, fucking DiCaprio in his wee chair.
That part where he goes into the game and stuff.
Mhm.
I will talk about that a little bit later, but it felt like that was remember the comic book part from the previous film?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much
It was taking that, but then going a wee bit even more kind of weird and fucking cartoony with it.
yeah, and
Um,
trying to obviously just appeal into the time, the
mhm.
video game market. But
Super
well,
Nintendo and all that sort of stuff.
yeah. hmm
The Power Glove, I actually think
The Power Glove, I
I
completely
think they
fucking
got
forgot about
I
that, and
think they
I
might
was
have got
like,
sued for that, or they were.
they got sued for the Power Glove.
I think so because that was a
I need
legit
to look
thing,
that
wasn't
up.
it? It was a thing. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, the Power Glove, Nintendo Power Glove
Um,
was a real thing.
there was a cease and desist from Nintendo. I don't know if it ever, if anything happened, but I'm pretty sure there was some sort of case that came up where
Yeah,
Nintendo
no, you're
tried
right.
to. Is
I'm
that
having
right?
a wee
Yeah.
look here. So, um, Freddy, right. Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmares creators secretly included a Nintendo product in the film without the video game company's permission.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So,
Fuck's sake, lads, come on, like laying the
yeah,
side down here.
but again, it's even the fact that Freddy goes now and playing with power whenever he has
Yeah,
the power glove,
and he's like touching the fucking thing and all.
the wee buttons and
Um,
everything. Yeah.
I know. So the script was written by Michael DeLuca, who was a producer at New Line as well. He was the president of production at New Line, so he wasn't just a producer; he was the head of production at New Line. He has worked in the industry for fucking years as well. He's still working in the industry. One of the scripts that he wrote after this was In the Mouth of Madness, which is a John Carpenter film starring Sam Neill.
Mm-hmm.
A fantastic film, and it's not the best script. Let's be honest, Dan. It's
No,
it's
it's
quite a poor script. It feels like it's lots of ideas that they just throw together to try to get to the finish line. And I mean, the actual screenplay itself, I haven't read the screenplay, but going by the film,
Mhm.
you know, it's not. There's some nice things in there, but it's very very
Again, it's
messy.
all very much undercooked,
Yeah,
underprepared.
yeah,
It just it falls apart. There's really like I think we can both agree that we like some of the some of the sequence. I think probably Spencer's sequence with the video game and stuff is probably some of the better, more fun stuff. Yes, it is pretty much just a play on the comic book stuff.
I hate it, man.
But oh really? Are you
Yeah,
not? I was like of all of it, that
nah,
was
I
the bit
hated it.
I sort of enjoyed more so than some of the other kills in this because they just felt a bit I don't know, it just started to get a bit kind of like actually no, that's a lie. There's the hearing aid bit. The hearing aid
Yeah,
stuff is pretty cool. I like the use of sound and stuff there. But I mean overall it's just one of those ones that I find myself really find it not hard to pay attention. There's bits and pieces where I would start focusing again because I
mm.
remembered something. So I'm like, I watch this because I remember it. But then I start to unfocus again.
There's hardly any blood or gore in the film at all.
Yeah, no,
Um,
very little.
or
Because again,
anything.
even whenever your boy with the hearing aids head explodes, it's green. Like it's
I
why
didn't
what
mind, and I didn't actually mind that.
I just didn't get
But
it,
yeah,
compared
see,
to everything else we've seen before.
yeah, it feels like there was a conscious decision made um to just not have blood, like not a lot of blood anyway, or anything
Hmm.
too terrifying. Like I know Rachel Talalay has admitted in interviews and stuff that she did want to go more comedic and she wanted to stay away from the kind of horror elements, which is
But
bizarre
again,
to me. It's like
even
if this is going to be the funeral of Freddy Krueger, like
go big. Because
surely
even
go big or go home. Do you know what I mean?
that final fight, so Freddy gets the cut across his cheek and that's bleeding. But there's a couple of times where she kind of like hits him in the face with the claws, and there's nothing there. There
Mm.
doesn't she doesn't mark him or anything. I was even watching that, I was like, that
It's
like
weird. It's a very weird thing,
Freddy's
yeah.
claw is like one of the deadliest weapons in the entire franchise, and it's doing fuck all here.
Mhm. So, just to go over the plot a little bit, if you're not familiar with Freddy's Dead, it's set like 10 years, I think, after the previous film, supposedly.
What
Um,
what
I know. Now
what is
we'll talk
with
about the
oh
opening. We'll talk about the opening in a second, Danny. Let me just get through the plot first. I don't understand what the whole 10 years thing after means, but 10 years after it says in the opening, and Freddy wants to leave Elm Street and he wants to expand his horizons.
yeah.
So that's the whole kind of gimmick of the story is that he's trying to go beyond Elm Street to kill other kids, I suppose, because he's killed all the kids in Elm Street apart from one. There's
Yeah.
one last survivor who we think is the John Doe character,
Yeah.
and we're led to believe that John Doe is potentially his son, but he's not.
It's
He's
not
actually got a
him.
daughter, and
Oh,
the daughter turns out to be Lisa Kane's character, who is the where's she at? She's working at the home, the
yeah.
youth shelter. So and he was using this character of John Doe to get to her because he wanted to, I suppose, pass on his evilness to her so that she could
Yeah.
still
She
kind of
starts
carry on
killing
his legacy.
kids in Springwood. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird
Um.
one. I mean, it's very, very much it's an interesting concept,
Mhm.
but it's they just don't really know how to execute a lot of their ideas, I feel, as you said.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the concept was there, and I think they could have done a lot more with it, but nah, didn't
Yeah.
work. Didn't work for me.
It just
Um,
didn't. They just seem to not let it pan out enough,
mm.
which is such a shame because, as yeah, like you say, there's some really good ideas. The idea that Freddy had a child, and I really like the flashback scenes in
Oh, brilliant!
this,
Yes, of
which
course, yeah.
show. I think that's again some of the better parts of this is when we get to see those flashbacks to his family life,
And
and
as
then
Zelda,
and Zelda. Oh fuck that bit! Fucking whenever he's getting the
the
beating, I
straps.
was like, Jesus Christ.
Excuse me.
But yeah, that there, and
And
then the
who's his
idea
dad?
who's who is his dad?
Alice Cooper.
What? I didn't even try on. That was fucking Alice Cooper. What the
No
fuck?
fucking way.
I did
Seriously.
not even realize that that was fucking no
It was Alice
way.
Cooper, it was I. That's because he wasn't wearing the fucking.
Because he just looked so. He's
Hey,
just a
do
yeah.
that.
It just looked like a
A
dirty
normal old
old
fucking homeless man.
fucking yeah. It just
That's what he looks like.
that's crazy. I did not even. Why have I never realized that before?
It was Alice Cooper. It's old Freddy's dad.
That's mental. But
There you
yeah,
go.
that there, that those the idea of getting to see a bit more about Freddy's past, and we already knew he was like the son of 100 maniacs, but now we're getting to see him as a young child killing animals and enjoying a good thrashing, and then
Oop.
being a married. Well, I say married. He very quickly does off with his wife,
Hmm.
but also a dad. Then, and it's weird because he does seem to actually genuinely love his daughter, but also like loves killing
Hmm.
kids.
Yeah.
But I really like that, and I also really like whenever he has the whole thing like everywhere has an Elm Street. I think that was
Hmm.
my favorite bit of dialogue in this.
That was the tagline of the film, I think,
Was
was that every town has an Elm Street.
yeah, that
Um,
for me was probably the only real decent bit of dialogue in the whole thing was when it comes out with that. I was like, "Ooh, you spooky bitch!"
hmm.
That's good.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know if I like the whole every town has an Elm Street thing. I don't know. But it is good. At least they were trying to think big. They were trying to think, how can we? Which is weird because if this is the last film, why are they thinking
Yeah,
beyond?
it's
Do you know
weird
what I mean?
though. This ends up kind of almost a little bit sprinkled into Freddy vs. Jason a wee bit, don't you think?
Mm,
Like I know it's him. He's using Jason to frighten the kids of Elm Street again so that he can get his power back. But it's
mm,
the fact that he's again stepping out of Elm Street in order to do that, in order to manipulate somebody into doing his bidding. So I
mm.
think there's kind of a bit of seeding there for Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, I do love seeing Freddy's story. As a married man, and then as a child and as a teenager.
Hmm.
I think it's interesting to see that he was a human being, and we know he's a human being, but it's still interesting to sort of see that backstory, and that is kind of explored a little bit in, I think, the first episode of Freddy's Nightmares.
Yeah.
And Robert Englund has famously went on record to say that that's one of his favorite episodes that he did of Freddy's Nightmares, and he really enjoyed this aspect of trying to explore Krueger's backstory, and he wished he could have done a wee bit more with that. So I did enjoy that part. What about the part of how his powers is explained? Because the great thing about Freddy Krueger is that we don't know why he exists, and we don't know
We
where his
get I
powers comes from.
we get ideas. Again, there's like we kind of notions I think throughout about this idea of like dream demons, and it's something to do with demonic powers anyway, or there's like a dream realm or whatever, but this one just really like leans into it and gives us fucking demon sperm.
What they're like
Like demon, it's shown
piranhas.
they're shown as like snakes in the like stone carving,
Yeah.
and then whenever we actually see the fucking puppet, they just look like skulls with tadpole tails, like
Mm.
spine tails.
Hmm.
And I was just, and it's the way they're fucking flying about the place, like,
Yeah, they sort of talk to each other. They communicate, don't they?
yeah, and they're just like, what is it? Whenever they like first meet Freddy, they're like, "Come on, let us in," and like
Uh,
fucking fly into him and all. And it's they're like, again, it's that element of they're it felt like they were trying to be funny with it, and it falls
mm,
so fucking
mm,
flat. And they look, I actually quite like um, whenever what do you call the
Doug.
no, not even when Doc's explaining it, you're a bit like, okay, yeah, yeah, exposition. But whenever Maggie steps through the stone
Oh,
gate
at the
and
end, yeah.
they're all like writhing around and they all have different like three different wee faces. I was like, okay, cool. I like that. I like they've got, but whenever it turns into the like Scully tadpoles, they're all like they're three of the exact
Mm,
same thing, and I was just like, that just like for all we know, they've just filmed the same thing three times, moving different ways, and then layered it in. I was like, that just seems very lazy. It's
yeah,
just
it's
yeah.
it is what it is. I like the initial concept behind it. I do like the dream realm. I love that concept.
Mhm.
Um, I love the fact that there potentially is a force there that has power over people within this realm.
What are you talking about? It's
But
just they've only been looking for one evil
yeah,
person. Dog explains that there's
I know.
one evil person.
I just don't understand. I like the idea that this is an ancient thing and has maybe been going on for thousands of years and all that sort of stuff. And they could have really went into that and explored that and way back to the beginning of the Earth and stuff. But
We could have had the whole fucking thing about like one of the reasons that Craven came up with the idea was because of that town that just fell asleep and died.
mm,
Like, why could we not have had some of those real historical events of people like dying in their sleep, or even tales of mass hysteria? Because let's talk about it. The fucking start of this movie with
yes, let's go there.
the random title card that's like Never No Street 5, Freddy's dead, and
Uh,
it's the fucking
I love it. I'd
random
say love it.
like song over the top of
No,
it.
but
I
it's the
was
also you can't start an Elm Street film without a quote.
oh
So
fucking
it's the quote. It's the quote from a Nietzsche, isn't it?
is Anishka quote followed by a
Freddy Krueger quote.
fucking Freddy Krueger quote. What is it? His primetime bitch, isn't
Mm,
it? That comes up. And
I
then
love
it's
that. I actually
fucking
love that. Yeah.
the map of America with the text coming in about how like all these kids have been dying for the last
Mm,
however many years and the parents are gripped by a mass hysteria. And I was just like, what? Is this some fucking war game shit? Like what the
yeah.
fuck's
But
going on?
where did that go? Because they didn't really touch on that again. They kind of just went to
No,
this kid
I can't
in Final Destination, basically.
yeah.
It went to.
It's so strange. It was such a weird wee opening. And I just
Um,
but whenever they talk about hysterias and stuff, I was like, why didn't we touch on some of the things that actually inspired
yeah.
the franchise, you know?
Like actually, not just mention it as a thing at the start. Actually, show it or explain it or kind of
Mhm.
explore what that
Because
is.
we see a lot of the parents in this like hysteria, like whenever they're going into like the buildings and stuff, the parents are like playing out like the teacher and all, and oh fuck. You know what really fucking whined me the whole way through this film? And it was so fucking, it was like, we fucking get it. We get there's a nursery rhyme in this franchise.
Oh God.
But the way you kept seeing the like one, two, Freddy's coming for you, but and then it just kept
Oh, the
playing out
blackboard and
until the
all,
end.
and yeah,
Yeah, and I was just like,
I know.
does this have any like apart from letting us know Freddy's about? Does this have
It's not.
any other relevance?
It's not intelligent. It's not as if it's not even hidden. So
No.
it'd be different if you did hide it, and it would be like, oh, people were finding it, and it would be like, oh, look at this. But you weren't. You were sort of doing it that weird thing where it was just there,
Yeah,
and it's like it's not clever writing, or it's not. You know what I mean? It doesn't. It's
we
not
get, yeah.
intriguing either.
And the thing is, they don't like it never actually gets played or they don't even use any musical cue. And that's one of the things well with the soundtrack for this.
It's
They're
very light on
it's
the
very light
score, like.
on the OG. Yeah, we get like one instance where they properly play it, but that's it. Then it's its own thing. And I'm not saying that the score wasn't bad, but it didn't really give us any like
Hmm.
little sprinkles of the original. You know, it gave us one moment of it and then kind of moved on.
Yeah, I don't mind the fact that they play like rock songs and stuff.
Yeah,
I quite like.
it's of its time.
I quite like the opening, as cheesy as it is. You
Yes.
know, the Final Destination part, sort of the airplane, blah blah blah, and then of course the whole Wizard of Oz thing that happens, which is
Oh my
I
god, I
always love
completely
that.
forgot that
Yeah,
that was the
man.
thing in it, and then it starts playing. You hear the music first, and you're
Oh,
like,
I yeah,
"That's
proper
fucking."
fucking
And then
Wizard of Oz, fucking.
when he's like, "I'll
There's a
get
fucking
you, my pretty,"
there's a
I was
tornado
like,
happening.
"Oh my god, it's Fred." It's the fact that it's him with the silhouette, but you can still see the fucking glove
Mm.
gripping the end of the broomstick. I was like,
My
"Fucking
pretties.
Freddy as the fucking as the
A
witch."
Wicked Witch. I know.
That fucking killed me, man.
It's horrible, but I do love it. Like there's something that I just love about it, and I don't know
Yeah.
why. I
Please
because
tell
I love
me.
Wizard of Oz. I think
Yeah, please tell me you're going to do Freddy on the broom as the thumbnail for this episode.
I have
If
to. I think I
you
do
have
have
to,
to. Yeah.
yeah, you got to, you got to.
Um, if I can get a good image of it, but yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. I do love the whole kind of like. I mean, obviously it's supposed to indicate like the dream world and going from reality to a dream, and because that's kind of what Wizard of Oz is, sort of thing. But it was just maybe too on the nose,
Yeah, oh yeah,
like taking the
100%.
music from Wizard of Oz. I mean, I think, it is actually the music. It's not even like a different
Hmm.
version of the music. It
Yeah,
is
no, it's just straight up Wizard of Oz
taken
music.
out. They probably had to pay
I would
a
say
bit of money
that's
for
why
that.
they couldn't afford to let Nintendo know they were doing the
I know,
hardware.
unless it was like public domain or something, and they were able to just
Maybe.
get it for some reason. But anyway, I do like
Maybe.
that start. It goes
Yeah,
on way too long because
yes.
like the
Was
bit
it?
where
He falls out of plane.
mate,
He's in a
it,
tornado.
it
He
was the
falls
bit
off
that
a diving board.
it was the bit he falls down the hill and he's just rolling for days.
Oh my god, that's some fucking Princess Bride shit.
And you're like,
I
this
was
is
like,
proper, yeah. I mean, I'm assuming it was a homage to
hmm,
Princess Bride, but fuck me, like,
what's that? Yeah, it was the whole thing. And then there's the Wile E. Coyote moment when he breaks
oh
through
Jesus,
into reality, and
aye,
Freddy fucking touches
the big
the
silhouette.
fucking the silhouette, and it fucking closes, and he's like, "I'll be seeing you soon." It's like,
I mean, my God, they're really, really struggling to find a decent plot here.
yeah,
Um, but
it could have been
it could have been so much
could
better,
have
and
been,
I say
but
that because before they got to this script, or before they filmed the script that they had in the end, there was obviously different versions. Peter Jackson famously wrote a script for Freddy's Dead. Well, before it was called Freddy's Dead, it was just part 6.
Mhm.
Um, and his version, I think, is out there somewhere. I think it's out, and then maybe not the actual script, but there's like descriptions of what the script was anyway. And his idea was that Freddy was like a really old, like an older version of himself, and he had become like a legend, but he was also a bit of a bum, and kids weren't scared of him anymore. So kids would take sleeping pills to go into their dreams and attack
Hang
him.
out with Freddy.
No, attack him, like beat
Take
him up,
shit.
and no, he was like they would bully him basically, and then
Yeah.
obviously something happens where he kind of turns around and starts killing them. I don't really know where it went to in terms of where the end was, but that was kind of the pitch for it. So sounds interesting. I think that I would love if they ever do another Elm Street. I would love Peter Jackson to be involved.
Mhm.
I do have a feeling that
I
there's
think it'd
definitely going to
be.
be an Elm Street movie within the next 5 years.
Ooh.
Um, so I'd love Peter Jackson to come back. That'd be
Imagine,
amazing.
imagine Peter Jackson coming back to do some horror shit.
How good would that be?
I
Like,
would, love. I love Frighteners. Absolutely love
yeah,
Frighteners. And yeah, it would be really interesting because again, I think you see a lot of his, even in the Lovely Bones, you see like he really plays on the
yeah, the
kind of
dreamscapes and
horror shit
stuff.
and stuff. Yeah,
Um,
this is our petition now. We want
mhm.
Peter Jackson to do some horror shit again.
I'd love it if he came back and
Never
did
in Elm
something.
Street,
Yeah.
preferably, but whatever, we'll take it. Let's have it.
So that was his pitch. Which again, like that sounds amazing.
Hmm.
But there was another draft before they got to this one that was a direct sequel to Part 5, and would have had the kid from Part 5, Jacob, I think his name was,
Hmm.
slightly older, and it was basically him as the main character who had dreams and blah blah blah. He would be hunted by Freddy, but then he would then go and get help from the fucking Dream Warriors, who are all
Whole
dead,
gang
by the way.
together. Yeah.
So I don't know how that would have
But they're
worked.
not
So
dead. Dead, not dead. It's fine.
yeah, I mean, there would have definitely been a wee bit of retcon in there, or somehow they would have had to explain, and maybe it was in. I don't know. I don't know.
Resurrected.
So
Yeah. But again, that's another thing about this film that I kind of liked and didn't really get explored too much is this idea that all of Freddy's victims are still not alive, but their spirits are trapped within Freddy's dream realm. Whenever you see Spencer watching the TV and they're all like calling out to him, and then his mate, the one with the hearing aid, runs through and is like trying to get his attention, and then we see Johnny Depp's character, and it's like they're still there, like they're all still trapped within the dream realm with Freddy. They're his children, and I was like, this is a good idea, but it's just not. It's never explored in any real
yeah,
depth.
it
It's
doesn't
just
feel like they actually had that idea. It feels like, oh, how can we get Johnny Depp on screen? Now,
well,
I don't think it was Glenn. It was, I don't know what character he's playing. It was, maybe it was Glenn, but like
well,
under a
he's I
different
think
persona.
I know he's credited as Glenn
Is he?
in that, yeah. He's credited
Okay.
as Glenn Lentz, and I love that they're doing the whole, this is your brain on drugs,
Yeah.
like PSA. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and it gave me this. I was like, "Ooh, fuck!" Like all Freddy's
Well,
victims are with him, but again, it's another half baked idea.
well, I have mentioned my Elm Street script that I'm writing before. Yeah. And it's got a wee bit of that in it. So I'll say no more, but I'll talk to you about it in private sometime, Danny. But it's got a little bit of that sort of vibe to it. So, but talking about vibes, we mentioned Dream Warriors there. There is a little bit of a Dream Warriors vibes to this in the sense that it's not set in an asylum, but there's a gang. There's a gang who are living together, and they have that sort of brotherhood. They kind of have that brotherhood like the Dream Warriors did. You
Yeah,
have the tough girl, you have the sort of geeky guy, you have like the different kind of
the
elements. Yeah,
stoner.
yeah, the stoner.
Yeah.
And then you sort of have like the sort of cool guy, and they have these kind of different elements that we've seen in previous Elm Street films. Obviously not as good as Dream Warriors, but
No,
I feel like maybe they were trying to
they were trying to
resurrect,
recapture that
recapture
magic,
some of the magic. Yeah,
and
didn't
you
quite
just
work.
can't get lightning in the bottle
Nah,
twice. You just
you
can't.
can't.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Even the tough girl bit, like I was kind of like, okay, she's kind of cool. She's been working with the doc to like use her mind. Whenever she like, he's just
It's
like
able
hit
to
me.
sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like hit me, and she knocks him out. And then whenever they go into the dream world together, she's like, I could have told you there was an easier way by focusing your mind.
Hmm.
I was like,
But why again? Why do they not explore that? They don't. They
yeah.
don't go deep enough into these characters. Like the characters are just very one-dimensional, which is a shame because I think some of the characters are decent, and if they had kind of tried to develop them a bit more, it would have been a lot more interesting.
And you know who it really, really feels in this one?
Hey.
Freddy.
Oh mate,
Freddy, I feel really
awful.
becomes about shitty one-liners and zingers. Like it's just like the way he looks, his
Uh,
dialogue. Apart, I like the every town has an Elm Street line. You're not as much a fan of it, but everything else that came out of his mouth, I was like, and you know what?
yeah.
This film did the thing that films that know that they're bad do, because they try to remind you of the good shit that came before, and it
Mm.
had a fucking montage during the credits of all the good stuff
I
from the
love that. I
franchise.
did love
I
that.
love it,
Yeah.
but again, it's the thing that bad sequels
Well,
do.
I think it's I think it's okay this time because this is the last film. So there's
It
sort
was
of
yeah, well, there's
it's a
that, but
celebration of
it's
I know, I know.
I know it's meant to be that, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I see through you. I
Mm.
see you're trying to show me the good stuff from the franchise, so I forget about the shit I've just watched. I see you. But yeah, Freddy just gets done bad. Even like
Oh,
the
big time.
whenever he's playing the video game and he's like playing it, and he goes, "What is it?" He's like, "Wow, look at the graphics." I was like,
I know.
"Fuck
It's
off."
fucking awful writing. And like I don't mind the one-liners. Like he's always had
Yes, he's
one-liners,
always had one-liners, but they're just really
but
bad.
they don't land here at all, and they're so shit. Like they're not even clever or funny, and I like. I said I didn't particularly like the concept of every town has an Elm Street. I mean that in the sense that um I like that he just existed on that street because that's where, it was close to where he was, that's where the parents, sorry, lived who burnt him, so there was a reason why he was there, and it meant something. And
Yeah.
I I wouldn't have minded had they explored this, but this was the
Explored a
last
bit
film,
more.
so they didn't really explore it in any other films. But that's
Yeah.
what I meant by that. I
We've
liked
never
I
seen
liked it that he said it because it was actually quite he delivered the line very well. But the one-liners in this just do not
the
land.
one-liners or stinkers. And I think the better moments where Robert Englund gets to shine is whenever he is actually out of the mask and he's playing him with his daughter,
Just Fred,
interacting with
yeah.
his daughter, and then with the wife, and he's like, we need to talk. And he's kind of it's really, really sinister
Hmm.
in that moment. And another bit that's quite sinister is whenever he's fighting his daughter and he doesn't have the glove, and he's like, "Well, I didn't need the glove to kill your bitch mother, and I don't need it to kill you." I was like, "That's Freddy. That's sinister and tongue in cheek, and that's what we want. We don't need these shitty flat one-liners that he was
Hmm.
coming out with, you
Hmm.
know."
Yeah. The other thing that I didn't like about Fred in this film, as we've already mentioned, is his makeup. Like, it's just way too pink,
So
way
pink.
too sort of rubbery looking. Doesn't look at all like burnt flesh. Just looks like a rubber mask.
Yeah.
And for me, what kind of makes it even worse is, and I hate to say it, is all his facial expressions that he does. He just too many times the camera pans up or zooms into his face and he makes this stupid funny expression. Yeah, or like,
Hmm.
it doesn't work, and whatever way the makeup is sitting on his face, it makes his face look really round and weird, and it just, I don't know, man, it's just didn't work for me at all. And
No.
I love fucking Robert Englund to death,
Oh
and
yeah.
I love Freddy Krueger to death, and I
Hmm.
still love the film because it's part of the franchise, but it's just, oh
We
God.
still really, 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 really want him on the show.
We
And if
do.
anybody has any way of contacting Robert England and
Let's
asking him to appear on
let's
our
hope we get
show,
him on.
we would
I
die to
know.
very happy boys. But yes, this one unfortunately just it really done Freddy dirty.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I think we did talk about how there's some decent sequences, some surreal
Yeah.
stuff happening, but it's not surreal enough where
No.
surreal has to make sense, if that that doesn't make sense. But what I'm
Yeah,
saying
I think
is
it's one of those
there's too
ones.
many just random things that happen just for the sake of like, oh, let's just do some random stuff.
Yeah, it's never really overly clear when they're in reality and when they're in a dream. It becomes confusing in that regard. At times I thought I was kind of like, are we in the dreamscape or is this reality? And then are we meant to not know or do we or
Yeah.
and it didn't feel well structured in that regard.
Hmm. Um, and I suppose like apologists of this film will probably say, "Oh, that was the whole point, is that you weren't supposed to know that was the idea." And fair
Mhm.
enough if it was, it did work. But
It's one of those it's even whenever they first go into the house and it's like everything starts to change and it goes the way it is in reality. So it's kind of like, well, does Freddy then have the ability to manipulate reality? Because that's not
nobody
been
knows.
that's not really been in his wheelhouse
Yeah,
before. As the ability to fucking turn the trees from living to dead by
uh,
making them fucking go,
I
into the
think they
ground and out
just,
again.
I just think they wrote the script with no plan. They just said, right, this could be cool, this could be cool, and this could be cool, and they basically just did it, and they didn't have any sort of concept or idea of what the lore or rules were or anything like that, or that can be a positive sometimes, but it
Yeah.
just wasn't here. So
Wasn't here. No.
um it's definitely less nightmarish, this
Mhm.
film, in the sense that yes, there's some cool dark imagery when they go to the house and stuff like that, and even when your man's getting his ears done, like that was quite a cool sequence when he's
It's
dropping
a
the pin and stuff.
Yeah, but again, you're right. The way Freddy's getting on in that scene really takes away from this because he's being really goofy about it.
Mhm.
And I was like, this could be cooler and more sinister. One, if it was maybe a little bit darker. It was the whole film I feel was overexposed. There wasn't enough shadow in
Yeah,
there, and
a little bit darker isn't
yeah,
right, but I know what you mean now.
yeah.
More shadows, yeah.
More shadow. But yeah, it just yeah, there was some good
It
stuff
was
in
the
there, but it
lighting was
just
very
didn't.
bland to me.
Yeah.
It was they could have just kind of been a wee bit more interesting when it came to stuff like that, but it was very cartoony. The whole
Mhm.
film was just very much cartoony, and like
I
I
like that
think, sorry, go
the
ahead.
the pin sequence you were saying about the pins, and I like that. I like that it's know your fella's trying to stop them from clanging because it'll hurt his ears. But I like whenever that sequence is introduced, Freddy pulls a pin from his finger.
Hmm.
And I was like, ooh, look at him pulling it, because that's quite, for most people, the idea of pulling a pin out the end of your finger is fucking eee.
Mm.
But then when it cuts to him with all the pins, I would have liked to have seen him like pull like a load of them out of his
Out of his
fingers.
head, like
But
Pinhead.
instead, yeah,
That would
something,
have been
something.
cool.
But instead, he's just got like a handful of pins and
Yeah,
just goes, uh,
I
and you're
know.
like, all right, okay, cool. Now he's gonna have to
And like,
listen to all those.
why just a pin? Like, I mean, you could make noise. He's making noise basically, but it's like,
Because
I know
there's the
it's a
whole,
whole, I know it's a whole pin dropping and stuff.
yeah, the
Uh,
chalkboard nail thing as
oh
well. I was
God.
like, that that could have been. Why did it have to be? We've seen him dragging his claws along pipes and doing the scratching and the screeching, and it's
Yeah.
been so sinister. And this, it just became a joke. Freddy dragging his claws on something has always been a sinister calling card of Freddy coming for you, and they reduced it down to a really shitty joke.
We've
You
even
know?
seen it in, I'm pretty sure he's done that before in the classroom scene in part four.
Yeah, and again, it was
When,
really sinister because it was like a close up,
yeah,
and then the claws click and it pulls out, and he's standing there, and it's sinister.
but the way he's like, ooh, ooh, he's like a mime. He's just like, ooh, and
And
he's
again,
pulling it
I get it
out.
because the guy's deaf and he's playing a mime, and mimes are quiet.
Nah,
Just
nah.
no, no.
So not massive fans of the film. Nostalgia for me. Some nice sequences.
Mhm.
Still love it because it's Freddy and Elm Street.
Yeah,
Just a bit disappointed and
we're
wish that
not we're not mad. We're just
we're
disappointed.
just disappointed. Yes. But yeah, would be really interesting to see how some of the other scripts would have worked out for this. And it's not the best way to send Freddy home. They did apparently before the film came out, they did this big elaborate funeral in LA somewhere, I think, where they
Mhm.
invited old cast members, and they actually had a funeral for Freddy. That was I want to say it was televised. It was definitely news people there anyway,
Yeah,
and it was this big sort of you
I'm gonna
know
look up and see.
crazy sort of kind of propaganda type thing they wanted to do before this film came out, which probably helped with the ticket sales. But in general, it wasn't well received by fans and critics.
Yeah,
And
it was. You're right. It was so Andy with the director and cast of Freddy's Dead at Freddy Krueger's funeral in Hollywood in October of 1992.
there you go.
He had his jumper
Yeah, which is
atop his
cool. I really
casket.
like that. But
Yeah, it's a great way to
it's the same.
mark it.
It's the same when Freddy versus Jason came out. They had like a press conference,
Mhm.
um, with Freddy and Jason, and I love that whole sort of press conference, gimmick. Um, and it's really good advertising for a film. But I don't know.
This
It,
one
it,
just it wasn't a good way to put Freddy to bed.
nah, it really
You
wasn't.
know.
And even the way he died at the end, like he's just a bit of a bitch in this, like, isn't he? He just gets beat
Yeah.
up, and it's just like
Uh,
doesn't make sense. Like,
no. It's
I
the way, yeah,
suppose,
they're like, we're pulling him, we're pulling what is it with whenever she pulls him out of the dream world into reality and his head he starts to get like two titties on his
big
head?
bulbous head, yeah,
Yeah, he ends up with these two big balls. And I was like, why is
yeah.
he becoming the fucking tit head demon from Little Nicky? I was like, what's this about? I honestly like it was one of those. I was just watching it, and Una was watching it with me, and she was like, what the fuck's going on? And I
What
was
is
like,
going on?
she was like, this is shit. And I was like,
Mm,
yeah, I know, because
yeah.
like she wouldn't be a big Elm Street fan. She thinks Freddy's creepy as fuck, which I suppose is a good thing. But she was watching, and she was like, this is shit. And I was like, yeah, yeah, it's
So not the greatest way to send them off. We talked about a few of our scenes that we liked. I
yes,
quite liked the Wizard of Oz stuff, even though it was cheesy.
yeah.
You said you loved the game stuff, which I hated.
I like the game stuff. I like that, obviously it's very much like that whole sequence is playing on the idea that Spencer's a stoner and he's tripping out, man. And there's like the colors on the screen, and then you get the kids talking to him through the screen, and then you
Pardon
get
me.
the this your brain on drugs PSA, and we get the return of Johnny Depp's character and the eggs and stuff. And then we get him going into the video game, and there's that whole thing. Spencer's whole thing is that he doesn't want to be like his jock dad. And you have like the little video game versions of his dad, but he's kind of beating them up, and he's like, "I'm Super Spence." But again, yes, it's playing on the comic book hero thing from the previous films, and it for me it kind of works here, but again, it's very much a watered down version of what's come before. And then we get Freddy as a little video game Freddy, which I was kind of like, okay, cool.
Hmm.
And then Spencer seems to be beating him, um, and then Freddy gets the power glove, and that's how he takes Spencer on. Then is because he ends up with a fucking again. I loved the Freddy power glove reference because even before he announces it, you see it on him,
Hmm.
and I was like, that's a
But
fucking power glove. And
I,
then he says the
yeah,
line, and I was like,
I
that's
didn't mind when he went into the game, because I know it's all of his time. I
yes.
didn't like when he was walking about, like a fucking robot or like a computer game character in the
Oh
real
yeah. Oh
world.
fuck. Yes, yes,
I
yes.
hated
No,
that.
you're right. That was whenever he's bouncing up the stairs, and it's
Yeah,
very obvious, just like early fucking CGI special effects making him do it. I was like, fuck,
I really
that's
hated that.
so cool.
I could get on board with the fact that this character went into a game, similar to
Yes.
how the guy went into the comic book, and because that's not a bad surreal kind of idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel it could have done a lot better
Yeah.
with what they did do.
That is true. That is true.
So it wasn't one of my favorite scenes in the film.
Yeah.
Um, oh man, what other good scenes is there in the film?
There's the
Seems
flashbacks.
it's
We like the
yeah.
flashbacks. Flashbacks are pretty good whenever they go into Freddy's memories. Um, I kind of, again, I like,
Where's the kills, man? You know what I mean? Where's the
yeah. Can we
like
actually really recall them as much as we like? Again, I think between the pair of us, like we are putting the pieces together, but like it's
like
not something that if I was sitting myself, I'd be
the
like,
dude with the ears? That
yeah,
feels like an Elm Street kill because that's kind of what some of the other films have done. They've kind of zoned in on something
mhm,
about a character that makes them unique,
yes,
um, and they've used that to create a kill, an interesting
mhm.
kill, which I think that was quite interesting.
Yeah. How does
Could have been
Spencer die?
uh,
How does Spencer die? I can't like.
in the game.
Does he die? Does he die in the game
I
or
can't remember, man. I only watched it yesterday.
I see? And I or no, yes, I did before. But yeah, I
And then
actually
what
got
about the other characters? Like, because
does
um,
does
the other like the other girls don't die.
does um does Tracy not get killed? Leslie Dean, does she not? No, her and Doc survive. John Doe dies. John Doe
John Doe
gets
dies.
he.
Yes.
Oh my god, he fucking gets a fucking Wile E. Coyote death. He falls onto
Yeah.
a bed of nails, and then
Yeah.
he's lying with all the like little puddles of blood punctured into himself. That's right.
Yeah, because that's you think that he's Freddy's son, and he comes to the conclusion that he is whenever they go to the house and they're doing the whole looking at the history and being like, "Who is this dude?"
Yeah,
And then the whole twist is that no, actually he had a daughter, and then he dies,
yeah. But
which is
again, do we
pretty
do we
good.
we see the twist kind of coming, don't we? Like,
Well, I mean, you see the daughter early on in the flashback, do you know?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Like quite early, so like I don't understand.
doesn't yeah, it doesn't really
Mm,
give you much of a. You're not. I don't think you're overly like
no,
by the
but
revelation. But yes, he
yeah,
totally
so
gets fucking he gets a bed of nails to death. But again,
yeah.
even that, like it takes us having to talk about it to actually remember, oh, hey, that happens.
Yeah,
But
I
yes, you're
know.
right.
Fuck.
Tracy and Doc help Maggie to bring Freddy into the real world. And then they all or Maggie
Isn't there a
basically kicks
gun
the shit out of them.
involved? Don't they try and shoot him? Or maybe I literally watched this yesterday and I've seen it loads of times before.
No, does he
No,
not
she
end up?
gets the glove.
No,
Sorry, she gets the
remember
glove at the
she
end.
used the glove. But
Yes.
remember, they go actually before they even do that when they're like gearing up to like take Freddy into the real world. They go into the fucking kids' home like armory, and it's like it's a good job the police didn't come and take these away yet.
That's
And
what it
it's just
was,
like
yeah.
a load of like a fucking like knife with knuckle dusters and a
Yeah.
fucking like saw blade attached to a fucking bat, and it's
Baseball
just
bat or
like.
something.
What?
I
There's
know.
fucking throwing stars and shit. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
It was the 90s, man.
It
It was the
was. I
90s.
know. I've got to keep reminding myself that it's a product of its time, but it's still just one of those things. It's such a straight to
Do you know
DVD
what?
movie.
It is funny. Like
Hmm.
the kills are quite funny if you look at them, like going like, what is happening here? The
Yeah.
bit where your man's bouncing down the hill at the start and he's like, whoa,
Yeah.
bouncing over and over, and then whoa! And then he's doing that thing where he's like he's selling like a wrestler where he bounces and then he gets up and he sort of jumps again and bounces, and it is quite funny. Um, some of the lines of dialogue are very, very shite,
Yeah.
but there is some funny lines too, and it's just pretty poor writing. The acting's not great. Um, the editing's pretty poor as well. You know, it doesn't really make sense a lot of the sequences. They kind of jump around a bit.
Hmm.
The special effects are questionable. I know again it is of its time. Um, our good friend, uh, John Carter Beekler did the makeup. He did like Ghoulies and Reanimator, and he worked on some of the Friday the 13th sequels. Legend of the genre, sadly passed away a few years ago. He did work on the makeup, and I don't think that the makeup is very good, as we alluded to earlier
Yeah.
in the episode. It's not the best Freddy makeup, um, but I would assume that he was probably told go a bit lighter, go a wee bit pinkier,
Go a bit more cartoony. Like that's the whole.
make him
The
look
whole...
like a ball sack. Danny is basically
I mean,
a big veiny ball sack.
if your ball sack looks like that, you should probably get it checked out.
I know.
But yeah, it's yeah, it's very cartoony, I think, in its approach. I think had it been a cartoon, maybe I wouldn't have been quite so critical of it. But yeah, the whole thing's very Freddy's overly animated, the kills are overly animated, the dream sequences are overly animated, and unfortunately for Elm Street, I just don't think it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you said there the kills like there's hardly any kills at all really to talk about, and certainly nothing memorable.
No.
Which is one thing that you always associate with Elm Street is, oh, what was the kill? What was this kill? What
Yeah.
was the first kill? What was the second kill? Not so much the quantity of kills,
No. But the quality.
because there's not even that many kills in the first Elm Street film, but
No.
they're just so good that they're,
You remember
still
them.
today two or three of the best kills. Certainly two of them are still two of the best kills in the entire franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So Freddy's Dead, not our favorite in the franchise. That's kind of all we've got time for today.
Mm-hmm.
But as always, go and like us on Twitter
Yeah.
if it's still about. If Twitter's still about, that is at the Fright
Because
Club
that could
NI.
be Twitter's dead.
It could be dead, yeah. Instagram as well at the Fright Club NI, and we just launched a Facebook page as well,
Yeah.
reluctantly. Go ahead and look at us on Facebook at the Fright Club NI, funny enough. And as always, like and subscribe to the channel, share the videos, leave some comments on this video and some previous videos. Did you like Freddy's Dead? What did you like about it? If you didn't like it, then
Would you not
tell
like
us what
about
you
it?
didn't like about it exactly, and tell your horror pals about us, because that's the best way you can support us, is basically just by spreading the word, spreading the gospel, so we can get more
Yeah.
fans.
The horror gospel.
The horror gospel.
Also hit the bell. Don't forget the
Hit the
little
bell.
bell. Ding ling.
Hit the bell. We will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Monday Night Frights. But until then, stay safe, take care, and please do talk about Fright Club.
Do it.
Bye.
Bye, buddy.
Freddy's dead. Everyone's thinking if corruption rules the day. Hot yellow wind should come and blow them all away. Los Angeles, I hate them all, they run the show. There's somewhere else where I can go. To the daylight, where the night's right. Raining, feeling alright. Why was I born? Why was I born? Why was I born? I don't care what you have, I don't care who you are. You sit up there, you think you're bigger than the star. Who gave you everything, a reason just to live? There's nothing you've got to give. Nothing. 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 You think Freddy's dead?